Oh, today.
What is going on, guys?
Fuck.
Thought he was walking away because we were making fun of him. He wants to sniff my feet.
Put those things down.
Stop.
What's up,
the fuck's
guys? We're Cardinal Sin. I'm Will.
I'm Jake, bro.
I'm Chase.
And we're here to talk a little bit about the new album, Lucified. And, the news lately has been that Lucified is dropping on all streaming platforms worldwide on January 1st. So,
Debut single,
Steroid
November
out November 29th. You can pre-order the entire album on
As of
iTunes,
Monday,
Amazon, and Google Play as of Monday, right?
The 11th, yep.
Yeah, November 11th. So, we're just going to have a little conversation. It's going to be like a podcast type deal, except we don't have microphones and it's a video. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the album. So, let's talk a little bit about what it was like to write and record Lucified, because I know this is a project that's been going on for well over a year and a half, I think, at this point, between me and Chase at least. So Chase, take us to the beginning. Tell us and tell them what it was kind of like in the beginning days.
So I think a lot of the ideas for Lucified I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think a lot of them were kind of like appearing right after the debut dropped. For me, joining right after the debut, it was really a really interesting process, because you had, ideas that you pretty much wanted to throw at me. And, I was cool with whatever, and I really liked your riffs. So, starting about a year and a half ago, we just kind of started to churn stuff out, It started with, I think, Don't Shut Me Out, and it just grew. It grew and grew from there. A lot of the stuff you're going to hear on the record, a lot of it was recorded a year and a couple months ago, and a lot of it was recorded a couple weeks ago. It's really been a continuum sort of just kind of writing and recording.
Well, just to clarify one thing, a couple weeks ago, as of today, which is November 7th.
The end of October will be the last of it, yeah.
Yeah. So, actually, I kind of want to go more off the Don't Shut Me Out story, because that was a funny story, because I just remember you had joined the band, and I had this riff that was just in such an odd timing, and I couldn't expand on it, and I was like, dude, I need your help. And I was like, I want to put a breakdown in here. And you were like, all right, let me see. So 7 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8, that equals 28 divided by 4. Yeah, that's divisible. That'll work. And I was like, what the fuck? Who the fuck is this kid? And we put it together and it worked. And I was just like, damn, this kid's a badass. So
Yeah, it's really been an enjoyable process, especially with the recent addition of Jake. It's really been it's been good, and I think that anyone who hears the record is going to see a decent amount of our communication, all of our influences and stuff. So
yeah,
I'm really excited.
Yeah. So speaking of the devil, why don't you
boys?
tell us a little bit about your experience here in Cardinal Sin and what it's been like recording Lucified from your perspective?
Yeah, from my time with Cardinal Sin. So it's been 5 or 6 months as I officially joined and started the tracking in June of this year. And a lot of it, like you guys were discussing, this was a lot of you and Chase writing this out. I kind of came in when the riffs were relatively finalized, and most of this was down with the exception of a track or two, but you had your ideas of where you wanted to go. So I kind of came in from an outsider's perspective, and I got to hear a lot of these riffs. They were all still in a very raw state, but they had a clear path where they were going. And it was very interesting to work on it from that perspective, because it's an eye-opener from looking at it instead of looking at it from essentially egg to omelet instead of coming in at the very end.
Right.
And I liked that a lot. It gave me a different way of looking at things, as in other projects and stuff I've done with other friends or just playing with people at school. I like taking a very forefront approach with bass, and to make it, and instead of playing it in a more progressive style, taking it back, looking at it more like an Ian Hill, like a Jason Newsted, and just kind of like having that moment where you peek out, but more or less being able to hold things back, lock in with the kit, and really just add that girth on the bottom. It's been a good time.
Chase looked over at me. Chase was ready, man.
Oh,
man,
Chase was ready for that.
You are not a man of academia.
You say you go girth, and Chase goes.
I'm staring ahead and both you fuckers turn in.
Oh shit.
But yeah, no, it was like just adding that extra weight at the bottom. It felt
New
really
word
good.
choice, huh?
Yeah, because no, you two idiots just can't seem to work with that. Not men of academia, apparently. But it felt good working on this record a lot, especially when like some of the influences, like I'm not gonna give a name so everyone can take their own opinion on it, but everything from just kind of sitting and chugging on a root and just really holding that weight at the bottom, or kind of playing with a little more intricacies, or just more I refer to as the Outlaw Torn-esque riff. I love it a lot.
Yeah.
And this album feels good, and I'm very excited for people to hear it in general, especially with the reception that you and the others had with the debut, and then along with once you had joined. So I'm ready to get things going at that point.
Yeah. Cool. So, while we're still on the topic of Lucified, what is your favorite song and why?
Steroid. I feel personally the reason I loved Steroid so much was it was a song that at no point it felt like it let off the gas, or it didn't feel like you needed a transition. The whole song, it crawls along, but it punches you every second of it. And you can hear bits of just like your general style you've been developing over the last couple of years, and I can also hear stuff that like sounds very much so like early 2000s, like bringing that stuff back. I was talking to Chase one day. I feel like you can hear Alter Bridge in Steroid, and I love it.
That's funny you say that because I've never listened to Alter Bridge in my life.
They're good listens.
So now I'm gonna have to check them out. Chase.
I really like Life 2 a lot. I'm a big fan of songs that build to like one epic point. I think that it's kind of a sleeper in terms of its construction, because it's a lot quieter than a lot of the other tracks in terms of like, I don't know, just like general instrumentation. It doesn't go hard the entire time, but it's very dynamically in a way that it builds to a point that you can get excited for, and then it kicks your ass. And it's kind of like, I'm a big fan of like, I'm a big Oasis fan, which is like a very random reference for this style of music, but like either Don't Look Back in Anger or like Champagne Supernova, like both of those songs use their verses as like building points to get to the big epic chorus. And that's kind of like, for me, what Life 2 does up until Will's second solo. Everything leads up to that big point and hits finally, and it's just like, damn, like tension and release, So yeah, I think those are my reasons for liking it.
I'd agree.
It's very well put.
Because the one thing I agree with most is it definitely is by far the most dynamically varied track on the album. And it's welcome, especially in its placement in the track listing, with what comes before and directly after it. There's nothing funny about your track listing, well, I'm gonna say that right now.
Yeah,
What's
it's
your
no
favorite?
joke, man. What's my favorite? Jeez. Honestly, I don't have a favorite song, but if I were just to pick one, I'd probably say the title track. And I say that not just because, I think it's the best song on the album, but I think that, that is, it being the title track, it's the one that's, really supposed to drive the whole record. And I think it's supposed to be the song that really encapsulates the whole spirit of the record, all 8 songs. And, I think it goes in, it's not this drawn out, 10-minute song like, we have on our debut and stuff like that. Like Nation Under God has all these changes, and it's like 7 minutes long. I don't know how long that song is, but Lucified's like 5 minutes long, and it just goes, like you said about Steroid, I think it just doesn't take its foot off the gas at any point in the song. And I personally am really proud of that song. That riff actually came about before the debut was even recorded. So that's an old riff.
It's a hard riff too.
Yeah, it's a hard riff.
It works well.
Yeah. Oh my
you
god.
that
Yeah, that's definitely the most difficult riff I've ever written. The most difficult group of riffs I've ever written. And when it came to recording time, I was just like, why did I ever write this? But I've had that in my back pocket for a really long time. And I think finally once the debut was finished, once I was done writing and recording that whole album, I was kind of like, well shit, like I still have this. And then I was able to just sit back and relax for a couple weeks, let the debut start racking up a couple of streams, and then get back after it and just really crank out that song. And I was just really proud of how it came out. And I was like, I knew from actually that moment, I was like, this has to be the title track of the next album. I was like, this is the one that I want leading it off.
It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I agree.
Speaking of streams, it's a little off topic, but it's just kind of fun. If y'all keep it up, the way, not you guys listeners, this is speaking directly at the camera. If y'all keep it up, we'll be pushing probably 250,000 streams on the debut when this releases.
Wow.
Because we're just squeaking under that right now.
Yeah, what are we at? Like 215?
Like 215 or something like that.
Something like that.
It's something fucking insane.
It's crazy what you guys have helped us achieve, and we're seriously, like, I can't even put into words how grateful I am, especially.
Seriously,
It's really seriously, I couldn't tell you. I'm really at a loss for words.
yeah, because walking in on that as a new member was fucking insane, because you guys were just about or just crossed. You were just about, because we crossed it when I was in there already. That 200,000 streams, and that was unthought of to me, especially with like stuff you and I have done in the past. I think we have a collective of like 1,000 streams.
Probably even less than that.
Because the thing is,
with you.
I like that. Just to me is what makes us so insane. It's the fact that we're able to have and look at the analytics and see that reach just anywhere.
Yeah.
Like if we pick a state or a city, there's at least a person or two who's listened to it, and that's so fucking crazy to me.
It is pretty crazy.
And that's what gives me a lot of hope for this record.
Me too.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks.
So,
Yeah, love you guys.
while we're on that topic of excitement, I know we all said our favorite songs from the album. What track are you guys most excited for people to hear?
Well, I think I could go two ways. I think the first single, Steroid, is going to be a great lead off for the record. I really think that's going to be just a good song for people to hear. It showcases, I think there are tracks where every member of the band takes control of the song at one point or another, like Lateralis by Tool. Every member of the band kind of has their moment and is able to kind of show people what's going on. Except sort of, Danny Carey's crazy playing in multiple time signatures at the same time. Bridge, there's Justin Chancellor's, droning on the D string, and then there's the whole guitar intro and everything, and then Maynard's vocals. Steroid, I think we each have our moments in that song, and so it kind of showcases a little bit about us as players, more than anything else. And even us as arrangers and composers and writers too. So
I was about to say I'd look at it from there too.
Yeah, but I also think that Life 2 is going to really be a big surprise, especially within the collective discography of the band. I really think that Life 2 is going to kind of be like a curveball in some ways, similar to how Life kind of was on the debut. It's different than everything else, not in a bad way, just in kind of a different way. And it's my favorite track on the album in terms of production, definitely. I think that Will did a really good job with it, so.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I just want to, before you go, I just want to sort of follow up on a couple things Chase said. I think, some of the songs that I'm most excited for people to hear are Life 2, because I think that it's a pivotal point in our evolution as musicians and as writers. I think we haven't done a song like that, really. I mean, not even Life was like that, the first one.
No, you're absolutely right.
They're definitely they're two very different songs. They hold a similar thematic setup, but outside of that, they're very different.
Yeah. And I also want to say, your comments about Steroid and your comparison to Lateralis, how each of us have our shining moments, I think that's very apparent in Bleed.
That
I
was
think
the
that is
one I was
very
Yeah,
apparent.
that's
We-
also true.
I think, the most crucial part of that song is the verse. Because, I drop out, and you got just you guys holding down the fort. Jake holds that kick-ass bass line, just bump, bump,
That's the song I was going to mention.
and then Chase just locking in there. And I mean, it's, and then I have my time to shine there with a little verse and no guitar. And then there's parts where it's just guitar and I'm just introducing a new riff to the song and sort of, I guess towards the end, I don't want to spoil anything, but changing the dynamic of the song definitely towards the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited as hell for that song to come out too.
Yeah, because that was Bleed is the one I'm most excited to see people's reaction, hear input on that one. Because a lot of the other tracks on the album, I feel pretty confident in the way it'll be received and what parts will be, like that part where people will be like, oh shit, that's fucking good. Because there are very clear-cut moments in the other tracks. Bleed, though, is one of the ones where it depends very heavily on the listener, and that's what I'm excited to hear. Because the verse compared to the chorus, compared to the bridge and outro, you could build 3 completely different songs if you isolated them. And hearing that, I'm excited to hear people's reaction on how we've melded it, because one thing you two have both talked about is that orchestration aspect. Because while there are points on this album where you get to hear the musicianship from any of us, especially when it comes to some of the solos that you two have taken, both of you guys go absolutely apeshit at certain points, and it's something I'm curious to see reactions to. But orchestration on something like Bleed, to me, was ridiculous, as we were able to sit down and just kind of, as you mentioned, give everyone that moment to shine, but in such a way that it never feels forced. It doesn't feel like we needed to do it. It was just something that kind of happened naturally. And I feel like that's what I'm most excited to hear people react to.
100% agree, man. I think another one that we kind of forget is Peace. Peace
True.
Be With You. I think that, that was one of the first songs from the album.
Yeah.
That was the first one I tracked. Actually, the first one off the album we played live.
I think that was the first.
Yeah.
That was the first complete one, I would say.
That was, I'd say that was the first song that was totally finished.
Yes, it was. That was the first one I came in the track after you two had finished. And it was the first one to get its official mastering. That drum track, those guitar tracks, and some of those vocal tracks are well over a year old. Mm-hmm.
And then the bass track is probably a month or 2 old.
Bass track we did a day after we played in Philly, so that bass track's about as old as my tenure in the band at this point.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because we did the gig, I joined, and then I said, all right, when do you want me to track? And we got right to that one.
Time flies, man.
It does.
Time flies.
Can you shut up? We're having a moment here.
You just ruined a totally sentimental moment.
Bless you, though.
Thank you.
But yeah, no, Pace is another one. It's fucking crazy. I think Ben described it best.
Ben, yeah.
Just the way I've used the descriptor a lot, but it's because it's accurate. It punches you in the face, but it also has this, I'm going to just use it without describing the music. I'll just use these 2 descriptors because it soars in the middle.
I'd say that across the entire album, a lot of the songs take a lot of weird turns. I'd say that is not a weird turn, but that is the most profound turn that any song in the album takes.
It's very pronounced, yes.
It's
and
very,
it works
very
well.
profound turn that I think. Along also with Rage in the end of Rage in 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree.
That's a crazy.
Shout out to Ricky on that.
Yeah, shout out to Ricky Sobel for dropping a badass solo on that song. Yeah, man, I could say that about a lot of songs in the album, but I think Peace is really going to be sort of a instrumental, no pun intended, instrumental piece of this record.
Definitely.
So with that being said, what makes Lucified different, especially from the debut?
Oh, from the debut, definitely. From a listening perspective, being able to listen to both after, for both, either after being fully or relatively well written out. The one thing, I don't want to just say this in the wrong way because I don't want people to think that it's slowing down, but it took its foot off the gas in some areas and really laid in on the others. Because the debut, you can tell very well it's a thrash record. However, listening to everything we've done on Lucified, I don't know if thrash is the right descriptor so much as just pure fucking metal.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these riffs just come in and they rip shit up and they melt faces at points. They're gargantuan in a lot of places. I feel like some comparisons that aren't too far off is if you look at very much a Master of Reality comparison. If you look at that to Paranoid, the transition between those two records is
that
a
makes sense. That
similar
actually makes a lot of
comparison to me.
sense. That makes a lot of sense in many aspects, actually.
And I feel like that's the right transition because while there's changes made, none of them feel like they were unnecessary or for the worst. They felt like natural development, a kind of maturation.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think a lot of it has to do with production quality too, though.
Oh, definitely.
You know, it's a lot less trebly.
It's beefy.
You know, and the reason for that is Will's just grown a lot as a producer over time. There's no other real answer for that, you know. And I think that it plays into the listening experience a lot because, you know, people talk about, you know, George Martin as like the fifth Beatle sort of. You know, they don't say that for no reason. They say it because he pretty much was in that position. And, you know, an album that has horrible production isn't going to sound good to the listener a lot of the time in terms of, like, making them want to listen to it, regardless of songwriting or anything like that. So, while the production on the last record, you know, it was good, I think that
it wasn't. All right, come on, let's cut the bullshit. The production on the debut sucks.
Well, I think,
like we all know,
especially for a basement recording, I disagree. It was well put together,
I
especially
think that,
for what you had.
Yeah, I mean, I think that
so nice,
I think that what matters more is that there's growth. You know, regardless of the quality of the final product, you know, regardless of how it sounds compared to any like mainstream recording, what matters most is the growth over time. And I think that's a better way of looking at it than looking at it in terms of pure quality, if you kind of know what I'm saying.
I agree.
Because, you know, we could have taken this to any large studio and dropped any number of thousands of dollars, and yeah, it probably would have sounded, you know, better in some aspects. But also having Will as producer allows more artistic control and allows us to, you know, spend more time and money dedicated to other aspects of being in a band together.
Yeah.
And so I think we struck a really good balance on this record. And where the last record, you know, the production wasn't quite as good as this one, you know, this one really just kind of elevated.
This one is much cleaner, I agree.
Yeah.
And there was a lot more in the means of creative little text that got thrown in. Because as you listen through the record, there's a lot of stuff you can see that was played with sonically.
Yes.
That wasn't even considered.
Yep.
For the debut.
Yes. Will did a lot of stuff in post that I don't even think Jake and I knew about until he did it and sent us the tracks. Yeah. Which is great because Will's a good musician and he knows it sounds good. So I think that you really, Will, you were really able to add some things in that neither of us could have thought of. That was just kind of your own special touch, like producer's touch, sort of.
Aw, you guys are so nice. I appreciate that.
Now, what's the difference in your opinion?
I mean, I'm gonna take aspects of what both you guys said. You're right. I think the debut was definitely more of a thrash record. You can hear, you know, my like 6 years of Metallica fanboyism. But I think on the contrary, almost to what you said, I think that it really steps harder on the gas.
Oh no, I'm
in
not
terms
saying
of
it
it being
there are
heavy.
ways it does. That's where.
And you know, we cut the speed down a little bit because
let them on the speed,
but I think that this record is 50 times heavier than the debut.
Yeah,
I'd say it's a lot damn heavier.
Yeah, I think it falls more on the hard rocky side of the spectrum of metal than the thrash, and even like the groove you're in. Because like, I mean, one could argue that, you know, Kios is heavier than, I don't know, Mastodon or whatever. You know, it's just kind of two different styles of music, and you know, Kios might not be as distorted, and it might be on the more hard rocky side of things, but absolutely, I would say that just this combination of riffs and things like that, and the way that they held themselves, and not necessarily the amount of distortion defined how heavy it was.
Oh, yeah, no.
Kind of know what I'm saying.
I get what you're going for because I can make a million different comparisons between like Odyssey and Ghost of Cariella, but it really does depend. But for the style change, accounting for the sonic differences, this record still I hold is just a fatter, heavier record just about every way.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Well, boys, I think we pretty much covered everything.
Pretty sure we did too.
All right, well, we're going to sign off. Will?
I'm Jake. I clean my fingernails daily.
And who's that on the end?
And who are you?
Who is it? Who is it?
Come on, say it.
Who is it?
Say it.
Who? Say it. Who is it?
Say it.
I'm Chase, and you've been drilled in by Cardinal Sin.
Yeah!
You get off of me.